Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great. It's a great day to break down the world famous, internationally acclaimed utilization report. That's right. Dwain McFarland in the house. Blood, sweat, and tears have gone into, in my opinion, the single most actionable piece of fantasy football content in the business. No pressure, Dwain. I just need to blow everyone's minds for the next 52 minutes.
Well, hey, I appreciate it. The utilization report has come a long way. I don't know if you can remember back when I first started doing it and you and I were working together at another company we won't name. And man, I was doing like 12,000 words back then. I've gotten it down to 5 for you guys. Like it's usually around 4,500 to 5,000. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And man, all the great tools. Guys, over at fantasylife.com, got to go check them out. The entire utilization suite. Anything I don't get to, you can see on your own, man. Got data back to 2020. You can look at this year, all sorts of things you can do.
I invite you guys to check out the utilization report for free over at fantasylife.com. And don't even take my words for it. Take our fearless leader, Matthew Berry's words for it. He said today, one of the most useful weekly articles in the entire industry. What did week one mean? Where are the real signs? And where is there just lucky plays that we can't ignore? So again, going to break all that down and much more. First, though, it is time for our DraftKings opening lines. Plenty of usage-based nuggets coming up to get us ready for week 2. First, though, Dwain, those wretched injury gods continue to rear their ugly heads, particularly in San Francisco. I don't know what dark magic Christian McCaffrey has done to avoid injuries himself, but it seemingly has taken down all of his important teammates. We got George Kittle, we got Brock Purdy, we got Jauan Jennings, all dealing with various ailments. Of course, the biggest one, though, is the tight end in question, Mr. George Kittle. Unfortunately, we'll be missing at least the next 4 weeks with a hamstring injury that has landed him on IR. So, Dwain, maybe future Hall of Famer Jake Tongs can go ahead and repeat his week 1 magic. That was a cool game-winning touchdown catch after all. That said, really not expecting too much from these backups. I would advise everyone to probably look elsewhere on the waiver wire.
Yeah, totally agree. I think this is just Ricky Pearsall and, Christian McCaffrey. Like they're going to load these guys up. And Russell Gage, Ian. We got Marquez Valdez-Scantling. We got Sky Double Y Moore. Man, like they've had to pick these guys up and they're actually going to have to play them for like significant snaps because we probably won't have Kittle or Jennings this weekend. So yeah, you're just going to lean into Pearsall. You're going to lean into Kittle. Hopefully we have Brock Purdy though, because if we don't have that, we'll have Mac Jones, who did turn Brian Thomas Jr. into a king last year, apparently, Ian, and Trevor Lawrence can't do that. I don't know if you've heard.
Dwain mentioned Brock Purdy, toe and shoulder injuries. Adam Schefter said he's uncertain. Kyle Shanahan said the team will see how practice goes this week. Who Mac Jones will be reporting, for duty if we do see Purdy out of the picture. So as we know, Dwain, Kyle Shanahan seemingly loved himself some Mac Jones back in the day. We will see if he has enough to get it done. But again, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, or in this case, an alleged fantasy football expert, to say that this offense would be downgraded all the way around if we do see Brock Purdy out.
Yep, for sure. And Purdy will be downgraded if we don't have Kittle and Jennings, which is very likely. So I think he'll be outside of probably all of our top 12 ranks this week, especially if he's going to be playing with an injury as well. So if you're one of those folks that was, you drafted 2 quarterbacks and you like your second one, and maybe you started Purdy last week, be sure to check out the ranks. We may have him below the other guy you have on your team.
I do have him as QB 17 in my way too early week 2 ranks. You can always catch that article live on fantasylife.com, usually by the end of Monday, if not Tuesday a.m. Finally, Dwain, we do have actually relatively good news. Jauan Jennings with a shoulder issue. Rap Sheet has reported that it does not appear it is a serious issue. So Ricky Pearsall out there doing his thing. Jauan Jennings, they just re-signed old friend Kendrick Bourne. They released Robbie Chosen. Demarcus Robinson is back in 2 more weeks. Just an absolutely hilarious list of wide receivers that have been in and out of these 49ers doors over the last few weeks. So again, certainly trusting Pearsall more. Hopefully Jauan can do a little bit more with a full allotment of snaps this week.
Yeah, it's all about Pearsall. I mean, let's hope Jauan plays because if we don't have him, I don't. There's nothing you can do with any of these other guys, man. I know Kendrick Bourne used to play there, but how many years ago was that now? I know they talked about trading for him last year. So yeah, it's just all about Pearsall and CMC if we do not have Jauan Jennings.
Pearsall, my wide receiver, 22 currently right there alongside guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., Tedero McMillan, and Devontae Adams. Also, guys, a couple other injuries just to keep an eye on throughout the week. Hopefully, we will know more by the weekend. But Xavier Worthy dealing with a shoulder issue. And just to be crystal clear, we did explain this, I believe, on the Sunday night show. Andy Reid did not specifically say that Worthy is day-to-day. He says they are taking the injury day by day. So, again, based on what Dr. Jeff Mueller and some of the other trusted, resources on Twitter have said, it does seem like they're hopefully going to see if they can rehab this issue, because if they do have to go the surgery route, it would be a season ender. So it makes sense that they are seeing if they can hopefully get the near-term solution. Also, we have Falcons wide receivers, Drake London and Darnell Mooney, dealing with shoulder injuries. They are both considered day-to-day, less severe than Worthy, which is good news there. But I will say they don't play until Sunday night. Last week, Darnell Mooney was out despite practicing in a limited fashion all week and having that questionable tag. So really do try to have other options, because if we have that game time decision going to Sunday night, not ideal. And finally, Brock Bowers, your favorite tight end's favorite tight end, unfortunately has a knee issue. He said after the game that it wasn't a problem, that there was no concern moving forward. And Tom Pelissero reported that that was, again, what Bowers told him. That said, Dwayne, Bowers' idea of having no concern moving forward could be a little bit different than the Raiders. So I think, again, in this case, we'll see what happens with the wide receivers. But for Brock Bowers, Dwayne, it should be as simple as go ahead and go out there and get Michael Mayer, because no, we're not crossing out Brock Bowers' name in tight end 1 and replacing it with Mayer. But I would be hard-pressed to rank more than 10 or 11 tight ends ahead of Mayer should Bowers be out.
Yeah, I think he'll be right there as a borderline tight end 1 this weekend if we do not have Brock Bowers. And you're just completely safe. You've got the guy that's going to come in. I will say last week, small sample, but after Brock Bowers left the game, 30% target share for Michael Mayer over the end of that contest. So he is a guy that was a second-round pick, was very highly thought of, coming out of Notre Dame, scored well in the rookie supermodel. Just honestly, Ian kind of has had a bad run of it. I mean, he didn't have a great rookie season like we're seeing a lot of rookies do over the last 3 years. So that's the big knock against him. But I remember not so long ago when we did actually have to wait for some of these tight ends to actually come along and turn into fantasy machines. So looking at a guy in Michael Mayer, this is year 3. Year 2, obviously, Brock Bowers joined the team. Life happens, man. Life happens, and you got to deal with it. So, yeah, I would say Michael Mayer will be a borderline tight end 1 with no Bowers.
Still just 24 years young. And again, another situation where you do have to be on top of this because the Raiders do not play until Monday night. So that is why, again, it would just be the easiest situation. Certainly want to give Bowers every chance to get into that lineup. So more injury updates throughout the week, I'm sure. But for now, that is all we have. Let's get into some utilization report goodness. This has been our DraftKings opening lines. Football fans, I have teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook to bring you a can't-miss offer this NFL season. Right now, all DraftKings Sportsbook customers get paid in cash if you miss just one leg on your pregame Sunday NFL parlay. Here's how it works. Build a pregame parlay with 3+ legs. Each leg must have minimum odds of -500. Place your bet. Max bet varies. If you miss just one single leg of the parlay, it disappears and you get paid in cash. All you have to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using promo code FANTASYLIFE to get started. Stay locked in all season long. DraftKings Sportsbook is the best place to bet touchdowns, parlays, and everything in between. Thank you to DraftKings Sportsbook for sponsoring this. Let's make this NFL season one to remember. It is great to have our utilization report intro back in our life, Dwayne. It is time for our RB stock up and stock down presented by the fine folks over at DraftKings. It is the utilization report. And we are starting off with a stock up, Dwayne, that I know makes you very happy as a day 1 Bucky Irving believer. No, didn't have the biggest box score numbers in week 1, but as we know, that underlying usage usually is far more important for predicting the future. And you definitely like what you saw.
Yeah, I mean, 14.5 fantasy points in week 1, but to your point, the role actually grew. And the big thing that we saw is really it was just an extension of what we saw at the end of last season, where he really took over when they were in that playoff race. I know that's something you and I talked about in the preseason a little bit, what happens if Bucky Irving does just kind of stay in that role that he was in? And that's really what we saw here. Rashad White was off the field for a lot of these passing down snaps. All the short yardage work was still going to Bucky, but the passing down stuff is the big thing. He got 63% of the 2-minute offense. And if you look at his route participation, it was at 57%. Dude had 78% of the snaps this weekend. So if you look at what he did at the end of last year, averaged 20.6 fantasy points in this particular role that we're seeing right now. If you also look at the 83 utilization score that he put up, guys, remember that's on a scale of 0 to 100. So an 83 is good. If you look at it, 23 points last year when he reached that score, which was his best score, which he tied this week. But if you look at his historical comps, over 65% of them were running back one. So yes, I feel really good about Bucky Irving. And a lot of those guys, Ian, were top 6 running backs on the season. So if he stays in this role, man, like one, he's locked into a running back one finish. I think most people felt good about that already, but top 6 upside is definitely in play for Bucky Irving moving forward.
And this is a situation, again, where we have newfound rest of season, legit top 5 potential expectations here. So if you can find a league mate that is viewing him a bit more as that RB15 that he finished as in week 1, could be your time to pounce there in the trade streets. So I will say, Dwayne, you kind of called this earlier in the offseason where you said, what if this could be almost a Devon Achane situation where his role does expand? And honestly, this is great because, yeah, that efficiency was rough in week 1. 14 carries, 37 yards rushing, just 8 yards on his 4 catches. So did find the end zone. And again, I don't think Bucky magically became bad at football or anything like that. But if it is going to be a bit rougher sledding than usual while Tristan Wirfs is out of the lineup in particular, we got the Texans next up, Eagles, Seahawks, 49ers after that. Those are some tough front sevens. Again, we need every touch that we can get. So good stuff there on Bucky, someone that, again, you definitely should be checking the temperature of with your league mates. Let's talk about a situation, Dwayne, that is a bit tougher. Now, all of a sudden, we got to worry about if we can actually start these guys, and that is the Seattle Seahawks backfield. So on the one hand, I think we can confidently say stock up for Zach Charbonnet, who was able to get the higher snap rate over Kenneth Walker. But yeah, stock down for Kenneth Walker. And Dwayne, something we kind of talked about during the later weeks of August, but as we were seeing guys draft both these dudes, you can argue kind of a worst case scenario given the fact that they're eating into each other's workload now.
Yeah, I mean, look, Mike McDonald talked about this all offseason, or not all offseason, but in the preseason. He said, we've got a plan for Kenneth Walker. I think you and I interpreted that as, okay, they've got a plan to basically let him rest through the preseason so he can be a dog in the regular season. Misinterpretation. I think what the plan was is we're actually just going to take the workload down for Kenneth Walker, period, in hopes of keeping him healthy. Now, guys, it's still just 1 week, so we can still see things turn around. But look, there's no way to sugarcoat it. If you took Kenneth Walker in round 4 of your fantasy draft, I mean, this sucks. This is not ideal for you. Here's the one silver lining I will give you, kind of back to the point I was making around his snaps coming down, getting him off the field, less pass blocking, stuff like that. If you look at the total opportunities, it was still 10 rushing attempts plus 3 targets to Walker, which was better than Charbonnet's 11 attempts and 0 targets. Now, Charbonnet did get more of the pass down work, so I think we'll see that change in the future as if he stays in this same role. I will certainly be projecting Zach Charbonnet ahead of Kenneth Walker when I finish up my projections tonight. I think we'll probably all be ranking Mr. Charbonnet ahead. But here's the real challenge for us, Ian. Man, they're both running back 3s. I upgraded Charbonnet to running back 3 territory, and Walker downgrades to running back 3. That's not really what you want. They had utilization scores of 49 and 48 historically. Those have been mid-range running back 3s going back over the last 5 seasons of data. So we really need one of these guys, honestly, to just take over and just relieve us of the pain, man. And we can just bench the other guy and know that we have a really good handcuff, because right now, yeah, you can get Charbonnet in your flex if you drafted him. And I think you could have some weeks where you're going to get a little more than what you got last week. But at the same time, man, Walker's still involved enough that it makes it tricky. And we don't know what game scripts will do to this. This was a close game script they had. They were playing the 49ers this last week. They weren't throwing the ball very much at all. Now, part of that is Clint Kubiak. That is another potential positive here, Ian, is we do have a coordinator that we know is willing to absolutely freaking pound the rock. So that could be a plus for each of these guys. But at the same time, I have a hard time having either one of them in my top 24 running backs. I think they've got to be in that running back 3 range.
Early on, I have Zach Charbonnet, my RB28, Kenneth Walker, my RB31. And I do think that reflects the fact that we aren't necessarily now saying, oh my gosh, Charbonnet, easy, clear-cut RB1 in Seattle for the rest of the season. I wouldn't be shocked if those snap rates flip-flop next week, Dwayne. It could be a week-to-week basis. But at the same time, I think we have seen enough in 1 week to realize that we can't have any level of confidence right now in Kenneth Walker being the bell cow back. That, unfortunately, again, a lot of us did draft in round 4 or round 5 a few short weeks ago. So you did mention the run-first offense. One of the the single biggest shifts in terms of 2024 dropback rate over expected into the first week of 2025 belong to the Seahawks, guys. They were plus 4.5% in 2024, third most pass happy offense in the league, minus 9% in week one, all the way down to 28. So again, should be some meat on the bone, but at the same time, Dwain, didn't exactly look good running the ball out there. And that's the other thing. People are like, Charbonnet looked better. And I'm like, okay, yeah, he averaged 3.9 yards per carry with a long of 7. All right. And I understand that's not everything here, but just not sure they're going to be writing fables about Zach Charbonnet in week one here based on how that went down. So we'll see what happens. But overall, not, loving exactly what I'm seeing out of Seattle for everyone except Jackson Smith-Njigba. More on him in just a little bit. Another running back, Dwain, where it's actually a little bit surprising. You were going stock slightly down for one Chase Brown because, again, still getting a huge workload. That's great. But maybe this little piece of the puzzle that people aren't quite seeing that actually could be a negative in the long term.
It could be. Now, look, guys, if you read the utilization report, the headline says Chase Brown lost pass down reps, but he still had a massive workload. I wanted to make sure that I put, but still had a massive workload in the actual heading because I didn't want people to freak out and be like, oh my God, do I need to trade this guy? But you just need to face the reality that he's lost a lot of the passing down reps to Samaje Perine. Will that continue on for the whole season? I don't know. But if they keep giving him 100% of the rushing attempts, they're just looking for ways to ease this guy's workload, Ian. And the problem for us is we know the cheat code in fantasy is the receptions for the running back. So I think we are going to see the targets go down for Chase Brown. I do think that we're going to see a hit to his fantasy points as far as the stability week over week, because you know what the passing role does. It means if you get in any kind of game script, you're basically protected. Like right now, Chase Brown is looking a little bit more like a Jonathan Taylor, looking a little bit more like somebody that we know, hey, if the game script is good, they're going to get a lot of carries. They're going to probably score a touchdown. Maybe they score 2 touchdowns. But man, if it goes sideways on them, are they going to be out there to get the pass receptions? And that's the big challenge right now for Brown. So yeah, I give him a slight downgrade. He's still inside my top 12 running backs, guys. I mean, again, he got 100% of the rushing attempts. They did not nobody else sniffed the ball. It was all Chase Brown. I thought he was going to have a huge day, man. That first drive, he had a sweet little cutback run where he bounced off basically the back of one of his linemen, put his foot in the ground, got into the end zone. It looked like it was going to be this huge day. Ultimately, ended up with only 13.1 fantasy points. But still, man, a 79 utilization score is still really strong, and that puts him in borderline running back 1 territory. I'm still going to rank him as a running back 1, even though the utilization report is saying he's more of a high-end running back 2.
He did get stopped at the 1-yard line and did not score a touchdown on another drive. So close, yet so far away. Also, we'll say, Dwain, the Bengals O-line just got their butts kicked by Myles Garrett and company, okay? They were actually dead last in RB rush yards before contact, and it was in the negative. That means that on average, Chase Brown was literally getting contacted in the backfield before he can get anything going. So, no, losing starting right guard Lucas Patrick here for a few weeks is not going to be helping matters. That said, it's not like we've seen the Bengals working with a great offensive line over the past few years anyway. I would be much more concerned if we continue to see these troubles this time on Sunday against the Jaguars. Dwain, rookie running back rapid fire obviously has some really big names that people were drafting highly. So let's go through their performances and see how you're feeling. Starting off with first round pick Ashton Jeanty coming off an RB24 performance. That said, efficiency wasn't great.
Yeah, only 2 yards per carry for Jeanty. But if you're really worried about that and you're going to downgrade Jeanty because of that, we have a list for you. Kenneth Walker, 2 yards per carry this weekend. Bijan Robinson, 2 yards per carry this weekend. Are we going to flip out everybody? Chase Brown, the guy we just talked about, that no one's talking about his efficiency this weekend, 2 yards per carry. David Montgomery, 2 yards per carry. Bucky Irving, we already covered, 2.6 yards per carry. Christian McCaffrey, the great one, 3.1 yards per carry. Omarion Hampton, 3.2. James Conner, 3.3. The ever elusive and powerful Saquon Barkley, 3.3 yards per carry. It was a rough weekend for the running backs overall as far as efficiency goes. Who knows what this has to do with? Is it to do with a league trend where they're finally like, hey, we're gonna stop the run? They've been basically inviting teams to run the ball the last 3 seasons. Maybe they're going to try to stop the run a little bit more, but we don't know. We have one data point. This could just be completely random variance, but that's the main point with Jeanty. The bigger thing that you should be taking away is the fact that this guy absolutely got loaded up. We didn't even have Raheem Mostert active for the game. Have you guys ever seen Zamir White play football? If you think Ashton Jeanty's bad, I'll tell you just to go watch Zamir White. You're not going to like what you're seeing there. And so the bottom line is, Ian, 87% of the snaps, man. Like, I could just stop right there. even though he only averaged 2 yards per carry, he still got a utilization score of 74. And the way the score works, guys, is basically 80% of it is based on the way they get used. And then approximately 20% is on, okay, did they actually score fantasy points? And that's basically what we use as a proxy for talent. So when you have a bad day at the office, we want players that get used, but we also want players that score fantasy points when they get used. So it's part of the equation. But man, Genty's ranks, snaps 4th on the weekend, attempts 8th, routes 14th. He only had 2 targets, but he was out there plenty. So just relax on Ashton Genty, guys. In fact, the only action to take is to go buy low right now. If your local manager is, he's upset or she's upset that they took Ashton Genty in round 1, you should go trade for them right now.
Another first-round running back without the best week 1 is Mr. Omarion Hampton. Dwayne, not worried about the efficiency here, and the usage was great. That said, I did find it interesting that Jim Harbaugh said after the game that Najee Harris was on a strict 12 to 15 snap count. So maybe a little bit more concern here.
Yeah, there's a little bit more with Hampton because he actually has a good backup behind him and Najee. So in the projections that I was working on earlier, I took Hampton down to 65% of the rushing attempts. Last week, he had 83%. But at the same time, man, there's a huge cushion when you get 81% of the snaps and 83% of the rushing attempts. It's also a guy that they took in the first round. I went back and watched all the film on it. I thought he actually looked okay. There were a lot of Chiefs defenders in the backfield on his negative run. So not overreacting. I still think that Omarion Hampton is a guy that we're going to have a hard time ranking outside of our like a mid-range running back 2 at worst. So yeah, that's where you drafted him, guys. So you're fine. Chill on Omarion.
Travion Henderson, maybe not the fireworks we were hoping for, but I'll say this, Dwayne, I was surprised to see he still finished as the RB25 in PPR points. So hey, if that's his floor, man, not the worst thing ever.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Travion we have to remember, and we talked about this, we said he's going to start the season in a timeshare, might be behind Ramondre Stevenson, but what would cushion him from that, especially in PPR and half PPR leagues, would be the fact that he would be involved in the pass game. And that's what we saw. That's what we saw in this first game. Now, guys, look, I get it. You see a 34% snap share, that's never good. That's never good. It doesn't matter what position the person plays. When you see 34%, it's not ideal, but they really did prioritize him when he was on the field. Ian, if you look at his targets per route run, 33%. So that's really what helped us out there. And remember, this can take time. Travion is still, all the things you thought about Travion are still true. Don't forget them. Another name I would be kicking the tires on if he's not on my fantasy team. I'm trying to go get him because I don't think you're going to be able to get him this low for much longer.
And finally, RJ Harvey, who again looked electric with his opportunities. I mean, that 50-yard run was awesome the way he found the hole and then just exploded into the secondary. Yeah, that said, saw a lot of J.K. Dobbins and way too much Tyler Beatty for pretty much everyone other than probably the Beatty family. So thoughts on RJ Harvey, Dwayne?
Yeah, so the difference between Harvey and Travion Henderson, if you look at Harvey, it's like really similar with snaps and everything, 31%. The problem is the passing down work that he did get didn't really turn into very many targets because the guy they're using when they know they want to throw the ball to the running back is Tyler Beatty. You mentioned it, Ian. Only 26% of the routes, which you're like, that's not a big deal. 55% targets per route run. So they were prioritizing Tyler Beatty as their pass catching back. Again, another trend that I don't think probably lasts all season, but it is Sean Payton, man. He's shown us he's willing to use 3 running backs before. So Harvey gets a little bit more of a downgrade because Dobbins is getting the carries inside the 5. So that kind of leaves Harvey in no man's land. It's like, okay, you're probably going to get like maybe 7, 8 opportunities in the game, but they're not going to be inside the 5, and you might not be getting the pass down reps. Again, things could change, but for now, there's just no way that we can't downgrade Harvey to like a low-end running back 3.
Again, guys, this has been our RB Stock Report, the Utilization Report presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Reminder that DraftKings Sportsbook customers get paid in cash if you miss just one leg on your pregame Sunday NFL parlay. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and sign up using our promo code FANTASYLIFE to get started. Good stuff on running backs, Mr. Dwayne. Now, though, it is time to adjust those wide receiver ranks. Kicking things off with a man who scored the second most PPR points on the week, the one, the only, King Keon Coleman, man. 8 catches, 112 yards, and a touchdown on 11 targets. Yes, the tip touchdown, a little bit fluky in nature, you could say. Also, yes, we're not exactly expecting Josh Allen to be throwing the ball 46 times per week. That said, Dwayne, I know the utilization score tends to be pretty predictive for future performance, and man, did Keon look good after 60 minutes of action.
Yeah, man, like any data point, when we just have 1 week worth, like there's going to be a lot of variance. But what I can say is the utilization score is more predictive than past fantasy points, whether you're looking at 1 week, whether you're looking at rolling 4 weeks over 4 weeks. So yes, from that perspective, when I looked at Keon, I'll be honest, when I opened the utilization report Monday morning and everything was uploaded, or sorry, that was that was Monday morning because they played the game that you said was drunk on Sunday night. He had the number one utilization score. That was not something that I had on my bingo card for week one. Now, you, on the other hand, give a hat tip to you. You were drafting Keon Coleman a lot more than me this summer. So, good job by you. Couple of things on Keon Coleman. Okay. Number one, it was a really good performance. He had a 25 or 26% target share. If you look at his route participation, 94%, rarely leaving the field. And I think we just need to be open to the fact that, man, he's a second-year player. He dealt with injuries last year. The other side of it is, whenever I went through my breakout research, you guys can check that out if you want over at fantasylife.com. I put out 3 pieces on breakout wide receivers this summer, completely free. When I looked at all of his comps, they weren't necessarily great. I will say, though, there were outliers, which is what fantasy football is made of guys that did go on to become wide receiver ones. Alshon Jeffrey was his closest comp, Ian. And Alshon Jeffrey had a season very like Keon Coleman as a rookie, then turned into a wide receiver one in the second season. Michael Pittman was his other closest comp that went on to be successful. Now he became a wide receiver two. And that's kind of a close comp to Keon, right? This is a guy that is a contested catch guy. I do think Keon can work a little bit more down the field than what we've seen from Pittman. But yeah, I think there's an opportunity here. I've upgraded him to a wide receiver 3 this week. But man, if he has another game, even with like a 22, 23% target share, and he's out there over 90% of the routes, like he's going to be knocking on the door of wide receiver 2 territory. We tend to move, I take it in steps. Like if Ian was running the projections, guys, just, Keon Coleman, like he would have like 30 targets this week. That's the way the Hartitz model would work. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about it, man. Like I said, there's 2 sides to it. We'll see which way it goes this next week, but I had to upgrade him into wide receiver 3 territory. Where do you have him in the way too early ranks?
Wide receiver 36. I'm not getting too crazy. And I just think this matchup in particular against the Jets. Wow. I know, right? I hate it. It's
annoying, Jets.
But
he's gonna have
Sauce Gardner could have a shadow coverage on him this week. We saw him do a great job locking up DK. And also just that game script. The Bills are going to be touchdown favorites, not exactly expecting a back and forth shootout. But hey, boomer bust wide receiver 3 with Josh freaking Allen as his quarterback, Dwayne. So I would expect more of the booms than the busts. And again, the whole kind of thesis behind this was everything you said about the potential for a second-year talent to get better in a great offense. And also just the possibility to have the reigning MVPs lead downfield target and end zone target. Well, at least for week one, guys, only CeeDee Lamb and Jackson Smith-Njigba had more air yards than Keon Coleman. Plus, he already has 2 end zone targets, plus another fade that they threw him on a 2-point conversion. Maybe a bad play call. But again, they want to feed this dude the football in fantasy-friendly situations. That was, again, a great guy you could target at a wide receiver 5 ADP. Hopefully you have him on your bench or maybe even your starting lineup ahead of week 2. Let's move on to a guy, Dwayne, who was honestly kind of priced a little bit similarly, even more cheap than Keon Coleman. Chiefs wide receiver 1 at this point. Marquise Hollywood Brown, 99 yards, 10 catches on 16 targets. Hollywood Brown leading the NFL in targets in week 1 was not on my bingo card. Dwayne, do you expect more good times to be ahead for Mr. Hollywood ahead of week 2?
Well, look, while we have Worthy out and while we have Rashee Rice out, I think we have to look at Hollywood Brown as being. Yeah, Royals is also going to miss this next week. Don't know how long he's going to be out yet. Didn't play much last week. So yeah, the Chiefs are hurting. The thing I'll say about Hollywood Brown, and I wrote this in the article, guys, if you go back and watch it, you're not going to be super impressed. In fact, like most of it was all dinky dunk stuff. But if you play in a PPR, you'll take it. I think at one point I put out a tweet where he had like 15 targets for 38 yards, which is like almost impossible. It's really, really hard to do that. It'd be like a running back having 15 carries for 38 yards essentially. But then guess what? He got loose behind the defense. Yes, it was a busted coverage, but it's Patrick Mahomes doing a scramble drill. Like, that's what these guys like Josh Allen, his scramble, he had a scramble drill where he threw the touchdown to Keon Coleman. Sorry, Matt Swing had a swing in his game, guys, against Kendall Valenzuela because it was supposed to go to his guy Shakir and it got tipped to Keon Coleman who caught the touchdown. But when you have quarterbacks like this that can run the scramble drill and they can keep plays alive like Mahomes, you can have good things like that happen to you. So I don't expect, Hollywood to turn suddenly into like the old Hollywood Brown we saw with the Ravens where he made all these explosive plays down the field. I think it's just been too long since then. But we can go back to his days, Ian, if you remember, not too long ago, but when we go back to his days with the Cardinals, when we had DeAndre Hopkins out of the lineup for like 5 or 6 weeks to start that one season. I mean, he was out here putting up 28, 30% target shares on the regular. So Given the way this room looks, I do think that he is going to be the top option along with Travis Kelce for the next few weeks. Now, once we get Rashee Rice back, that's what casts the long-term ceiling here for Hollywood Brown, because then we know Rashee Rice is going to gobble up a lot of that stuff underneath. At that point, Hollywood would need to really be able to do some more stuff down the field to get those targets. But I would say I moved him to low-end wide receiver 3 territory this week. I didn't jump him all the way to wide receiver 2, but I wouldn't have an argument if someone wanted to put him into the top 24, to be honest. Like, I wouldn't really be able to blame them for that. If he has another good game like this next week, I mean, he'll be a wide receiver 2 until a teammate returns.
I also have been in that wide receiver 3 territory right now. But man, the way my dogs are barking when we're talking about him, maybe I do need to go ahead and bump him up as well, Dwain. So again, mentioned Jalen Royals. That would be the one issue for me. We'll see if he could be back in action this week, monitor that injury, because that was the guy where we were hearing throughout training camp could be taking some of those Rashee Rice, lower ADOT stuff that, again, was expected to go more to Xavier Worthy, but not for now while he is sidelined as well. So good shout, Dwain, on that. Again, busted coverage play, which, again, to your point, could happen more often with Patrick Mahomes than most guys. But yes, as much as I do hate taking away players' good plays, when they are a little bit fluky, I think it's more warranted. And yeah, 15 targets for 50 yards. Other than that, 3.3 yards per target, Dwain. That is not great. And even including the play, it's at 6.2. So again, not saying Marquise Brown is a game changer, but out there on your waiver wire, man, you could do worse than someone who, again, has a good chance of leading the Chiefs in targets. Let's talk about Deebo Samuel, Dwain, someone who you were very high on last week and got rewarded with a PPR wide receiver 6 finish, 77 yards, caught 7 of 10 targets, 2 drops, even left some meat on the bone. Also had a 19-yard touchdown run. So going to be having fun on Thursday night here against the Green Bay Packers. Great little game there. Austin Eckler also banged up with a shoulder injury. Not tentatively expecting him to miss time, but man, Dwain, could even see more usage for Deebo, God forbid, if Eckler is not 100%.
Yeah, man, 34% target share. We talked all preseason about him being, a perfect fit in Cliff Kingsbury's offense. If you go back and look at Cliff Kingsbury and the amount of targets that he's given to his wide receivers on RPOs, on screens, the amount of carries he's even given to his wide receivers when he's had someone that's capable of carrying the ball, all those things lined up. And we got some pushback on that. We're like, yeah, but it's a downgrade from San Francisco. Yeah, okay. But he at least landed in a spot where he could get used this way. And then the other beauty is the fact that he was doing more than that. And you brought it up on the Sunday night show, Ian. He caught balls down the field as well. He had a 21-yard crossing route. He had a 19-yard crossing route. He had a 15-yard in route that he snagged for 19 yards. So getting used not just in the stuff that's getting schemed up. You're going to get those looks, but now also getting some of the looks down the field. So yeah, I think this is really good news for Deebo. I think the other thing here is, like, we like Terry McLaurin, but we don't think that Terry McLaurin is suddenly going to be like a 30% target share guy. He wasn't that last year, even when there really wasn't much target competition. Now he caught more touchdowns. He made big plays down the field. But I just think there's a lot of room here for Deebo to continue to get these targets. Zach Ertz is obviously going to do a little bit as well. But if I had to pick today who I think is going to lead this team, assuming health, in targets this season, I think it'll be Deebo. That doesn't necessarily mean that Terry McLaurin can't be good as well. He had a very near miss down the sideline that we talked about on Sunday night. So he's still going to do his thing. But I think there's enough room in this offense with Jaden Daniels and, the gravitational pull that he has with all the RPO stuff and how much defenses have to respect him. It's very much like what we get with the Ravens. It just opens up so many things. And when you look at Deebo, man, 30% of his targets came on play action. Play action is an absolute cheat code for wide receivers and tight ends, guys, in fantasy. So that's the thing that we like to see.
It's just easier to get Deebo the football. Again, with the ways that Kingsbury wants to use screens and obviously even getting Deebo touches in the run game. Not too dissimilar from what we saw in San Fran. Brandon Ayuk was a very, very efficient wide receiver on the outside who was getting more targets regularly, though. It was Mr. Deebo Samuel. So again, 96 million reasons for Washington to keep Terry McLaurin involved. I don't think he's necessarily going to be falling off the face of the earth or anything. But hey, we got Jaden Daniels throwing the rock. Good problems to have. Deebo Samuel, get him in those starting lineups. A similar sentiment, Dwain, for Mr. Jackson Smith and that Jigba. My goodness, was this man awesome in week 1. 124 yards, 9 catches. He finished as a PPR wide receiver 11. Even lost a fumble, and I think he had a drop along the way. So also left some meat on the bone. No, Dwain, I'm not so sure that he's going to have a 57% rate of targets per route run. That was first in the NFL. Also was first in target share and air yard share. But hey, man, it's a pretty good start. And at the same time, if he does finish first in those numbers, albeit maybe not quite that high, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, to your point, but when you have a 59% target share, you got a lot of room to give. Like we can give 59% target share. You got a lot of room to give. Like we can give 30%, guys, and still feel great about Jackson Smith and Jigba. He had a 91 utilization score this weekend, scored 19.4 fantasy points. He did lose a fumble, or he would have had 21.4 fantasy points. Those pesky fumbles giving you the -2 there, Ian. The big thing for me that I saw with JSN, and I did go back and watch some of this as well, the data will show it to you, but was the 13.6 average depth of target. JSN has mostly just been an underneath player to this point in his career, and he was working more downfield. He did play from the slot some still, 29%, but Cooper Kupp got more of that work, and we've talked about that through the preseason. If JSN was going to be able to succeed on the outside, he was going to have to show that he could win in those ways, and man, he was doing it, and Sam Darnold is just absolutely dialed in with this guy. Honestly, Sam Darnold is the closest thing you could get to Geno Smith on these intermediate passes where they can rip it, man. They can just drop it in there. I'm not saying they're the two best, but they're very underrated passers in the intermediate and underneath range of the field. And so, yeah, JSN working with Darnold, they've immediately clicked. The other thing we're getting is we're still getting schemed up stuff. 23% of his targets came on screen plays as well. It's just a situation where the only concern here is if we continue to have this super run heavy offense, he's going to need really high target shares. Last weekend we had Sam Darnold pass for only 150 yards. But I will say this, again, very close game pretty much the whole way for those with San Francisco. And if you look at it, I mean, 16 of 22. It's not like Sam Darnold was bad. Like Sam Darnold was fine. I know, guys, he had the strip sack fumble against Bosa. You couldn't see him coming around the edge at the end of the game. And Darnold is what everybody's going to say. But as a passer, like he still looked fine in that game to me. So the big risk is obviously a really run heavy offense. But man, when you have a target share like what we're seeing here, and again, the big takeaway, like he upgrades to high end wide receiver 2 status for me. When we get these young guys like this that already broke out like in the second half of year 2, and now they're showing us this right away in year 1, like this, in my experience, you just need to get on board. You need to get on board. Maybe he'll give us some data points in the next couple of weeks where we change our mind. But for me, high-end wide receiver 2 moving forward for JSN, I wouldn't argue with someone putting him as a wide receiver 1.
I was about to say, I think you're the one who needs to get on board, Dwayne. He's my wide receiver 9 ahead of week 2. He's Freeman's wide receiver 6 right now. So we're already there. Hop on,
wet blanket?
Friend. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Wet blanket.
Well, I'm going to have to, we'll see where he comes in for me. But if he got a warm blanket. JSN got the warm blanket. All right.
Let's go through some rapid fire relaxes, Dwayne, RELAX, allegedly. Again, a situation where, no, not everyone balled out in week 1, but based on what you saw, you are urging the masses to calm down, maybe drink a Mike's Hard Lemonade, and just remember that we are dealing with some talented players here who did have some good underlying utilization. Starting off with number 2 overall pick, Travis Hunter.
Yeah, man, 29% target share. He had 8 on the day. That's a great first game, guys. I mean, he was out there for 84% of the routes as well. We'd like to see 90, 95%. I know there's some risk that it might go down a little bit, but man, 29% target share in week 1, like I'm down for that. Whenever you look at Tet McMillan, 27% target share. And Ian, you talked about how he could have been, he didn't kill you in the box score. He still scored you enough fantasy points that you could live with it. But man, out there earning the targets, could have been a bigger day had he been able to haul in that one play. He also had a DPI. And then if you look at Calvin Ridley, man, this is the one that I do worry about the most. And it is just due to like what the schedule looks like over the next few weeks, but a 32% target share. He had 8 targets. It was a tough day against the Broncos. Here's what I'll say. Again, fantasy is a game of outliers. And while he does have some tough matchups coming up, none of them are the Broncos. The Broncos are the outlier where we all pay respect to it, and we're going to bring guys down in our ranks when they face that team. Most teams don't fit that criteria, even if it's a tough matchup. And then the final one here, or 2 more, Chris Olave, 32% target share. The big thing with on Olave, man, so that's 13 opportunities on the day. Working from the slot, Ian, 41% of his reps, a lower average depth of target. That helps. Why? Because we have quarterback concerns, right? So we're going to get a higher completion rate on these underneath passes. So that's big for Olave. I think he's going to be locked into wide receiver 3 status, give you wide receiver 2 spike weeks. The final one I will say is Tyreek Hill. He did not play in the fourth quarter, so overall, like his data points don't look great, even when you look at the utilization report. But when I went in and dug in, Ian, 27% targets per route run, which doesn't care, like when you left the game, like just when you're on the field, and 50% of his reps came from the slot. So getting those mismatches inside, like what Debo and some of these other guys are getting, that's not something that we've historically seen that often for Tyreek Hill. I get it, guys. The Dolphins' offense is a dumpster fire right now, but those are 2 positive numbers on Tyreek Hill.
Keep an eye on some of these domestic violence stuff that ESPN was reporting about Tyreek recently. We'll see as things tend to move a little bit slowly with this. So again, we'll adjust as more information comes out as always. But yeah, man, look, it's a situation where if you have the chance, guys, I don't want to start Dolphins. But that said, as much as I came into my rankings with a very negative mindset with Tyreek and company, couldn't move him lower than wide receiver 27. So again, hopefully it was just one. Cannot state enough. Really, really bad week for Miami. But again, it's a situation where is their offense going to be that much worse than the Carolina Panthers, than what Trevor Lawrence was doing out there in some of these other groups? I don't really think so. So accordingly, again, trust the guy getting thrown the football a lot. So good stuff on wide receivers, Dwayne. Now we are going to be talking some tight ends. First, though, a quick word to our friends over at Premier National Sports. Hey guys, if you're someone you know as a high school athlete looking to take their game to the next level, well, Premier National Sports is a team to help you through that entire process. I was actually kicking it at the Dublin-Jerome, Dublin-Kaufman football game last weekend. Shout out Celtics, got the W. Saw some absolute ballers out there. So, of course, I just had to go down and creepily shake all their hands and pitch them to Premier National Sports. I'm just kidding. I didn't do that. But maybe I should have because, again, Premier National Sports is a true trusted recruiting and NIL resource for high school athletes and their families. You can help rising high school athletes take their game to the next level with personalized recruiting strategies and NIL education. Check them out. If you haven't yet, you can get in touch with their team at premiernationalsports.com. As we talked about on the top of the show, Dwayne, we got some unfortunate tight end injuries affecting us all. George Kittle's out for 4 weeks. We'll see about Brock Bowers. Evan Ingram's another one with a calf injury that, again, could unfortunately leave him on the sidelines. So we need to figure out what's going on. We're adjusting the ranks. We're looking at the waiver wire. This is now What to Do at Tight End presented by Premier National Sports. First guy is not going to be available on the waiver wire, but you should feel pretty good if you have him because, man, I ranked him tight end 4 this week, and that might be too low, Dwayne. Talk about Colts tight end Tyler Warren, the man that you dubbed the crown jewel of your entire fantasy draft strategy a few short weeks ago.
Yeah, man. He's a mid-range tight end 1 with top 3 upside already. He had the number 2 utilization score on the week, a 91 in his first game as a pro. That's absolutely amazing. 14.9 fantasy points that he scored this weekend. And if you look at the fit in the offense, it's something that we did talk about in the preseason, Ian. It's the Shane Steichen RPO heavy scheme, throw a lot of screens. It's really just an offense that's tailor-made. If you watched Tyler Warren play in college and the way Penn State used him in that final year when he went absolutely bonkers, there were so many things that were going to translate here. And so when you look at it, 33% of Warren's targets came on play action. Again, that's a cheat code for tight ends. One of his targets was on an RPO with Vanilla Vic, Ian, as you call him. And then he also got a target in the screen game. So they're just feeding him absolutely every way they can. Again, tiny sample, but let me just tell you guys, when you have a utilization score of 90 or higher on the season, if you go back to 2020, a top 6 finish 100% of the time. 60% of those folks that qualified for that had a top 3 finish in fantasy. Small sample, let's not freak out. But at the same time, he has to be a mid-range tight end 1, and he clearly has the upside to join the big boys. Even when Kittle and Bowers are back, they're going to be the top 2 guys with McBride. But he's the next guy in the next tier that's just knocking on the door, and we could eventually have to put him in. We may have to let him in there, Ian. We might have to let him in.
Now, I'm looking at it right now. The thing is, I looked at it first, Dwayne, as kind of a bad matchup this week against the Broncos. And it is. I don't love the potential for Daniel Jones to repeat, his week 1 heroics or anything. But at the same time, yeah, you got PS2 on the outside. You have some ballers in that secondary. It might actually make sense if they funnel more work to Tyler Warren because it'd be easier to get him the ball than trying to deal with those corners. And sure enough, man, last year, Broncos actually were a bottom 10 defense in terms of receptions and targets allowed to tight end position. So always important to keep that in mind, how different defensive philosophies and honestly talent levels can end up funneling production to certain positions. So good stuff on Tyler Warren. And you said it, Dwayne. I mean, this is stuff that Shane Steichen has done in this offense, but maybe if it was Joe Flacco or Anthony Richardson, wasn't doing quite as frequently last season. But man, when I was looking at it again, the differences in 2024 rates versus what we saw in week 1, plus 8% play action for the Colts, plus 19% pre-snap shift in motion, plus 9% for RPO rates. They were 2nd, 6th, and 1st, respectively, in those in week 1. So very good things going on in Indianapolis. Indianapolis. Again, not saying Daniel Jones is going to be that good each and every week, but if that is the ceiling that exists, man, very good news for Tyler Warren and everyone involved. Let's talk about a rookie, Dwain, that you love maybe more than anyone other than Tyler Warren at the position. That is Harold Fannin, the Bowling Green product, who, man, went out there, caught 7 of 9 targets for 63 yards, but the film was arguably even more impressive. This dude can move out there, and shout out to Kevin Stefanski for really unleashing him from day one.
Yeah, man. So it's a very similar situation to what we just talked about for Tyler Warren. Now, we don't have the same route participation. Tyler Warren was out there almost 80% of the time, like 75%. Route participation for Harold Fannin was 65%, but also had a carry on the ground, and they're moving him all over the place, Ian. Like this, they're using him every single way they can. They're lining him up all over the place. The nice thing is that this didn't come from David Njoku. David Njoku still had an 85% route participation. So really, this is a hybrid role where whenever they go to the 2 tight end sets, he's getting on the field, and then he's playing slot a lot of the time whenever they're as their wide receiver 3. So he's combined those 2 roles together to land in this situation that we're in now. Now we know why they cut Deontay Johnson, but yes, the rookie supermodel absolutely loved Harold Fannin Jr. He was the number 3 prospect in this class based on the model, behind only the guy that we just talked about, Tyler Warren, and obviously Mr. Colston Loveland. So absolutely love it. I think he's kind of like Isaiah Likely last year. It's a situation where it could be a little bit frustrating on a week-to-week basis, but man, they're doing so many special things for him that you don't get with Likely. Like a lot of the little free touches where Likely, yeah, he would get out there and play, but he had to go earn all those targets. Harold Fannin's earning some targets, but then he gets like a little bit extra just from the scheme stuff that Stefanski's drawn up for him. So I'll say this. He might frustrate you on a week in and week out basis at times. I think there's tight ends with better floors, but man, the ceiling is going to be really strong for this player. I mean, he's going to have games where he's going to score 2 touchdowns. Like it's just going to happen. I think the biggest risk, honestly, Ian, is if the Browns start off, and they lose another 3 games and they go away from Flacco. That's going to be bad for everyone involved. Now, when I say that, if there is a role that could survive it, it's going to be the player getting all the scheme stuff. And you mentioned Tyler Warren. It's hard for a defense, even like the Broncos, to stop players like this because it's so schemed up. Like it's like if you really want to get them their touches, you're gonna be able to do it, even though the defense might be able to take away some of these other players. So very positive for Fannin. I've got him as a borderline tight end 1. I am curious to hear how high you went on Fannin this week in the early ranks.
I have Fannin tight end 17. I could see moving up a little bit more. The way Kendall and I kind of broke it down yesterday, though, is that, again, if you are pretty good at tight end and you're just looking for the most upside possible the rest of the way, Harold Fannin is your guy. You should be prioritizing him. I do lean towards Juwan Johnson just for this week alone if you are trying to get more fantasy points because Dwain, again, this guy doesn't leave the field. This guy did just have 11 targets, and I do think there could be a little something to Fannin's boom coming because Joe Flacco threw the ball for 45 times against the Cincinnati Bengals. So, again, a lot of things to like about Fannin, just tough for me to fully get behind him in week 2 to the same level of someone like Juwan Johnson. I mean, Dwain, this dude, I think, missed 1 single snap the entire game. All right. We don't have to worry about Taysom Hill or Foster Moreau for at least another 3 weeks. Shout out Juwan Johnson, the tight end 1 of week 1 in full PPR points.
Yeah, I mean, Juwan Johnson's on track for a career year. We heard this from Kellen Moore actually before the injuries, right? Obviously, we knew that Taysom Hill was going to be out, but Foster Moreau, that's more recent. And they were already talking, the beat reporters were already talking about how much Johnson was playing and how active he was in the offense throughout camp. And then we saw it all come to fruition in week 1, so everything adds up. A 96% route participation. That's insane. We're talking about a guy that used to be at 65%. Now he's, like you just said, he's not really leaving the field at all. He was second on the team with a 27% target share. He posted the number 1. We said Tyler Warren earlier was the number 2. Juwan Johnson had the number 1 utilization score in week 1. Yeah. Absolutely looking good. So again, similar to Fannin though, like we do have Rashid Shaheed who's going to have bigger games. We do have Chris Olave to battle targets for, and we have a quarterback question. And right now we don't have Flacco. We got Spencer Rattler. So I think they're really close to each other for me, Fannin and Johnson. I do think if you want to go for the floor, Johnson is going to be more of the play. I still think that Fannin might have the most upside for the season. Having said that, it's really close, and I think Juwan Johnson's the name that not enough people are talking about, and he's available in both these guys are available in every league, and they're both worth picking up.
And I would prioritize both these guys over Dwain, our last tight end we're going to talk about. And that is Jaguars tight end one, Brenton Strange. Effed around and led the team in receiving yards in week one. Don't exactly expect that to be a weekly occurrence with Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr., certainly being certified ballers. But hey, man, it did happen. And certainly he did have the utilization to at least be an every down player. And unlike, Liam Cohen's last tight end, Kate Otten, there might be a little more underlying talent here with Brenton Strange.
Yeah, I mean, this is a former second-round pick from 3 years ago out of Penn State. So, I mean, coming into his third season, just really finally getting an opportunity to play. We've had Evan Ingram there the last 2 years, and he did play well in week one. Now, 70% route participation, so really close in the same range as Fan and lower than Juwan Johnson. I totally agree with you. I would prioritize those other two guys. A 14% target share, so that's also not elite. So I think he's more of a mid-range tight end too, but to your point, because of where he was drafted, because of the potential with the talent, like he is a guy that could come on and end up being like tight end 10 on the season would not surprise me. Trevor Lawrence, obviously going to have to get some things turned around, like for that to happen. But Brenton Strange, mid-range tight end 2 for me, probably this week in the ranks, but could end up being a low-end tight end 1 very soon.
Again, you can see all of Dwain's utilization report, all the tidbits and everything. Again, the dude's got 15 or so just central points. And then you just didn't stop there, Dwain. You had to go through about 30 or 40 extra players. So we appreciate you. Again, it's been our tight end breakdown presented by Premier National Sports. And then want to remind you all again, if you or someone you know is looking to play sports at the collegiate level and need help navigating the world of recruiting NIL, the fine folks at Premier National Sports have got you covered. Get in touch with Premier National Sports team at premiernationalsports.com. Fourth quarter here on the Fantasy Life Show. Get those fours up. It is time, Dwain, for a new weekly segment called our Circle of Trust. We have players who put forward some big-time performances last week. That said, was it enough to earn a spot in our Circle of Trust? Let's lock in and find out. Starting off with Cowboys 1, the man who is the RB7 in utilization score, Javonte Williams in the year 2025. Dwain, if we aren't worried about efficiency for some of these other running backs, are we worried about it for Javonte Williams? Do you trust Javonte Williams, Dwain, as a legit startable RB2 in Fantasyland?
Yeah, going into this week, we'll have to see what happens with Javonte over the course of the season. I did talk about that in the article, but there's no way you can't. If you're not upgrading Javonte Williams for this week, you're just being a stubborn mule's ass. Like, I mean, I'm sorry. The data is here. We were told Javonte Williams had basically turned into the clear-cut running back 1 at the end of camp. We saw, all the data points were there, and now he did it in week 1. Can he hang on to it the whole year? That's a different story. When I was working on rest of season projections today, which you can now find over at fantasylife.com as well, not just in-season projections or for weekly projections. There I didn't give him the same role he had in week 1. There, I did kind of hedge a little bit towards Jaden Blue taking over a little later in the season. Miles Sanders still remaining involved. But man, when you just talk about ranking him for this next week, Ian, he has to be in your running back 2 mix, in my opinion. We're talking about a guy that played 71% of the snaps. So even if you took 10% away because Jaden Blue comes back, that's still going to be 60%. That's really good. He had 100% of the short yardage carries. He had 100% of the carries inside the 5-yard line. And he had 77% route participation. So he wasn't leaving on passing downs either. That's something I could see Jaden Blue take a little bit from, Javonte on. That's something that we did see in camp as well. But yeah, man, in the Circle of Trust, at least for this week, we'll see what happens for the season, but he's in the running back 2 conversation.
Jerry Jones was on his radio show he does every Tuesday. He said Jaden Blue's status, quote, may have him ready to go, is a little bit non-committal on it. So, hey, again, as long as Jaden Blue remains sideline, guys, really is going to be tough to get too low on Javonte Williams. He is my RB24. And again, as much as that Giants defensive line scares me, Bill Cross-Camara and those Commanders certainly seem to be able to have their way with them in week 1. What about Travis Etienne, Dwain, whose status now looks more pure than ever after Tank Bigsby was traded? It is pretty hilarious to me that the fantasy community sees this and just cannot stop freaking out about Bashaw Tootin, which is fine. Have fun. I have him stashed on half my fantasy teams. I hope Bashaw Tootin has a nice season too. But come on, man, it's ETN RB1 season in Duval County right now.
Yeah, again, if you're not going to move Travis Etienne up, like you're just being stubborn, you have to move him up. We already needed to move him up anyway. Even before the Tank Bigsby trade, he had 18.6 fantasy points in week 1. Ian, you talked about it on the show on Sunday night, how he just looked more explosive. He's dealt with injuries over the last 2 years. I honestly think that run, that sweet run that he had up the middle for 71 yards, very similar actually to RJ Harvey's run, but no one wants to talk about it because it's Travis Etienne. He gets to those second level defenders, jams the accelerator, man, just off to the races. Obviously gets caught, there at the very end. But he had other chunk plays of 17 and 14 yards. But that run, I've watched every Travis Etienne run of his career. That was the sweetest run he's ever had. I've seen him have a massive hole and just hit through it and hit, a long touchdown run. We know he's capable of that. But man, the way he was seeing the field on that play, the cut, it was just all really, really great. And of course, utilization is there. 62% snaps. That's going to go up, guys. 57% of the rushing attempts probably also going to move up a little bit. 45% route participation. I think LaQuint Allen will probably get a little bit more work there. And then we'll probably see Bajal Tootin maybe get like 10% of the work. So don't know that they'll just completely load up Travis Etienne, but at the same time, we can't rule it out. He had the 11th best utilization score on the week of a 78. So yes, I do have him upgraded to mid-range running back 2 status. And yes, Bajal Tootin, just to say really quickly, he should be on rosters in every fantasy league at this point. Now he is actually in a situation where if something happened to Etienne, guys, I do believe Tootin is going to be the cuff for a lot of the work. I do think LaQuint Allen probably grows his role in the passing game if that happens.
Could be a situation like in Buffalo where, James Cook is the Travis Etienne, the clear-cut starter, and we have LaQuint Allen, a.k.a. Ty Johnson, working more in routinely, but I would think that Bajal Tootin, a.k.a. Ray Davis, is the actual handcuff to own. I apologize if that was too many moving pieces for you guys, but I swear it made sense in my mind as I was going forward. So Travis Etienne, my RB20 on the week, and again, now you could argue that is too low based on what we saw in week 1. What about Cedric Tillman, Dwayne, who now, since the Browns traded Amari Cooper and Cedric Tillman got put into his full-time role, he has 5 starts. He has peeled off PPR wide receiver 15, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 11, wide receiver 50, and this year, wide receiver 18 finishes. I'm not ranking him as a top 20 receiver, but man, the dude's done it in 4 of these 5 games. I think that should be enough to earn a spot in the circle of trust.
Yeah, and it's enough, honestly, to push Jerry Jeudy out of the circle of trust as a top 24 guy, which I already did last week. But now it's really like Jerry Jeudy is a wide receiver 3 because he's playing with another guy that has a potential to be a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 every week. And we've got to deal with Harold Fannin. So, there's a lot of mouths to feed here. But as long as Flacco's out there, yeah, I feel good about Cedric Tillman. I'm like you. I'm not moving him up into my top 36, but he's in the wide receiver 4 conversation. And if you've got an injury that you're dealing with, you've got a situation where you've got to pick him up off the waiver wire, I do think there are a lot worse options than Cedric Tillman. If he has another game like this, Ian, we're going to have to move him up. Like, he will have to move into the wide receiver 3 conversation. And if he does it again, we're going to be like, all right, wide receiver 2, are we going to put him in there? We're going to put him in there. Again, all these Browns mouths to feed. We need Joe Flacco. Let's win some games, Browns, because we're having fun, with the offense.
I'm very curious to see how this Browns offense holds up in Baltimore. Again, I saw Josh Allen and company really have their way with that secondary in the 4th quarter, but it was a little bit tougher sledding before. I really don't think the Ravens are going to be this bad pass defense or anything. That said, give up a lot of the yards last year. Maybe some of those, again, guys that they brought in were not going to be as good as I perhaps expected. 2 wide receivers from the Los Angeles Chargers, Dwayne, none named Lab McConkey, Quentin Johnston with a T, and Keenan Allen, both ripped off top 10 finishes last week. What a time to be alive. Chargers drop back rate over expected, man, plus 10% year over year, 11.6% overall in week 1. That was the 4th highest mark. Perhaps it was a bit of a game plan thing. We know how stingy the Chiefs are, but at the same time, Dwayne, we love Justin Herbert. Keenan and QJ are definitely starting in this offense. What's not to like here?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't know if it was a game plan thing. My thoughts are very similar to yours. We'll see. But we do know last year, after Justin Herbert got healthy after the bye week, this was a team that had a positive drop back rate over expected, even though it's a Harbaugh-led team, right? And so people just kind of forget that. It's something that we did talk about in the preseason. So there is, a scenario where this does hold. We saw it to a lesser extent last year, but now with an even more healthy Herbert, they may be willing to do it. And they also have more weapons now, right? We know that Lab McConkey's good. You add Keenan Allen to the mix. You've got the 2 young rookies that come in and kind of get a little bit of sprinkle of playing time as well. But Keenan, man, 29% target share. And I just think it's hilarious because last year at this time, the dude was out here getting targets, but he was playing with Caleb Williams, who was struggling, and everyone's like, oh, Keenan's old and fat. I'm like, okay, because he has on a dark jersey, I don't know. Like, he was the same player, and now he's getting dots down the field because he's playing with Justin Herbert. So He was the number 3 technically on the team from a route participation standpoint in this one. 78% routes. So if they do go to a more heavy game plan, like we could see him rotate off the field some. But honestly, I'm not worried about it. He's available right now in 50% of Yahoo leagues. He is a wide receiver 3 at this point for me. But man, could be a wide receiver. Another guy that could be a wide receiver 2 by next week. Oh, Quentin Johnson.
Herbert.
He's going to be just sitting there.
Yeah.
Where'd you put Herbert?
I moved QB7. And again, it's tough, but given some of these injuries going on with the other quarterbacks, man, I just think what we saw from him, honestly, continuously as a rusher and the potential for him to sling the ball around. I mean, this is a deep group of wide receivers, and it is a prolonged tier and everything. It's one of these weeks where, again, you can say QB 11 could be up there. I'm not going to overly disagree with it, but man, Justin Herbert, Dwayne, I think I ranked him as a QB7 in my way too early, like ranks back in February. Well, it took a little bit, but we are back on the train. Also, this one's a little bit scary. I believe in Kyle Pitts again, Dwayne. Tight end 7 in week 1. We got the injuries to Drake London. We got the injury to Darnell Mooney. Even without that, though, he looked good. He looked big and athletic, Dwayne, which was supposed to be the entire allure of believing in Kyle Pitts in the first place. Maybe, just maybe, the injuries that he did have over these past 3 seasons impacting him more than we let on. Are we back in on Kyle Pitts in the year 2025?
Look, it's the best he's looked in 2 years as far as like just fluidity, just the way he was moving around on the field, the explosiveness after the catch. Still a tad out of the control at times. Like when he's one of these guys that's such an athlete, I think that sometimes like it's almost like his body's moving faster than his mind. But man, it's the best that we've seen. If you look at his utilization, an 83% route participation. So that's over the mark of 80%, which is something we really love. Historically, that's been good for tight ends. 21% target share in this game. Yes, Darnell Mooney was out. Yes, Drake London left at the end of the game. I think it was 3 drives that Drake London missed at the end of this contest. But look, he's playing really well. To your point, when you look at a lot of the issues we're dealing with right now at tight end, I moved him up to mid-range tight end 2 territory, but I moved him up from mid-range tight end 2 to low-end tight end 1 territory if we have either Mooney or London out. If one of those guys is playing, probably like a borderline tight end 1 this weekend. But the bigger scenario here is like, this guy does potentially have rest of season value. He did look a lot better. It'd be one thing if he was just kind of force fed and we turned on the film and we're like, ugh, this looks bad. It was the opposite of that. He looks really good.
Running some nice pivot routes. They were using him as a quick chip. And then it was underneath stuff that, again, got the ball in his hands, and then he was just able to make things happen after the catch. We know he can upstretch the seam, too. Didn't even have to go down that road. Last tight end, Dwayne, someone who I'm not feeling quite as good about, despite the nice week 1. That will be Arthur Smith's BFF, Mr. Jonnu Smith, because, again, Dwayne, as great as the design looks are, and, hey, guess what? We do feel better about Jonnu this week than we did this time last week, so that's a win. But expecting too big of things moving forward could be tough because the Steelers do still love themselves some Pat Freiermuth as well.
Yeah, look, man, Smith played 53% of the pass plays, and so did Pat Freiermuth. Now, the thing you get with Smith is when he's on the field, they're going to try to design stuff for him. But guys, go back and look at when Smith played with Arthur Smith for the Falcons in 2023. You can do that in the utilization report and the game logs, and you can see all those games. It was a maddening experience. It's so funny how, like when we think of the past, we always think of it like, oh, the good old days, man. That was so great when he had Jonnu Smith. No, you never knew which week to start him. Yes, did he give you some of those spike weeks? He did, but he also gave you massive duds multiple times. So Arthur Smith, always a factor here. Freiermuth is still involved. So yes, he made it under the section of the article known as It's a Fugazi. Ian, let somebody else worry about it.
And with that, guys, going to wrap up this edition of the Fantasy Life Show. Again, all of Dwayne's utilization report and tools available at fantasylife.com. Please check those out and otherwise get those lineups right. We got a week 2 matchup to win. I'll be back tomorrow with Cooter Doodle and Jake Trowbridge breaking down some cool stuff ahead of week 2. Dwayne and Matthew Friedman in the house on Thursdays for our weekly rankings edition. So great to be back, and we appreciate you guys tuning in as always. So if you like the show, please like the show. Subscriptions always help us as well. So for Dwayne, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everybody.